Hey, welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel. Want to talk about grid down survival, Grayman survival. How do you know? How do you know if it's a grid down or an EMP? It seems like when you look at everything going on in the world right now, grid down is certainly a possible SHTF scenario, whether it's a cyber attack on critical infrastructure, whether it's merely a component failure on critical infrastructure, a terrorist attack on substations, domestic or foreign, right? We've seen a little bit of everything lately, and there's always, of course, the possibility of an EMP. So let's talk about Grayman options and strategies that you might use to survive, right? So first question is, what do you do in the first 5 minutes, right? Power's out. You're sitting at home, or you're sitting at work, or you're in your car, you're coming back from the grocery store, you're at the grocery store. What do you do in the first 5 minutes? First minute, power goes out, it gets really dark all of a sudden, or your lights out, fans turn off, you realize, oh, power's out. So first thing I think you want to do in the first couple minutes, and it might be a natural thing to do anyways, try to determine the extent of the blackout, right? If you live in a place that's prone for blackouts, it might be, oh, rolling blackout, brownout, no big deal. Grid down, you might be expecting them, but what if you're not expecting it? So first thing I would do is get the phone out and see if your phone works, right? If your phone doesn't work, all of a sudden your phone's dead and all the power's out, you might be talking about an EMP, right? In that situation, if you have a car nearby, you might want to go outside, try to turn on the car, right? If the car doesn't turn on and your phone's not working and all the power's out, maybe you have a radio. Some of us old folks have radios lying around. The radio doesn't work. Well, that's probably an EMP, and that's going to be a different first 5 to 10 minutes, first hour, than if it's maybe just a regular blackout. But even a regular blackout could go long, right? It really depends on what the cause was. If multiple substations are down, if a cyber attack takes the grid down, could be a prolonged outage, prolonged power outage. So first 5 minutes, determine the extent of the blackout. Do your vehicles work? Does your phone work? You know, if it's EMP. So what do you do? So first thing you do, and once again, depends on the outage, but if you believe it is a serious power outage, first thing you want to do is start to gather water. Water is a very important resource, and you can get a lot really quickly. Hopefully you already have water stored, but if you have any 5-gallon buckets, do you have any Tupperware containers, anything like that, any plastic bins in the closet or in the garage, start filling those up, right? If you have the water bob, which is a big water bag for your shower, your bathtub, a little water bag for your bathtub. You can get those online for not too expensive, and that can hold 100 gallons of water, right? Start stockpiling water immediately, depending on where you live, where your water comes on, whether it's from a tower, whether it's city water. It's highly likely that your water supply depends on pumps running, and if there's a major blackout, and if it's more than just your street or your house going black, it's possible those pumps won't be able to run in the near future. So you want to get as much water as you can. That could be a huge differentiator between long-term survival, between life and death, right? Whether you have water stored or not, that first little bit of time is kind of that golden moment to store as much water, right? Get that water stashed up very quickly. Then, you talk about prepare your preps, right? What do you have for security? What do you have? Start checking on things, even if it was an EMP. There's things that might still work, right? Try to take appraise the situation, right? Do your flashlights work? What do you have? Do you have candles? Do you need your candles now? I always say search for the injured first, right? If anyone's injured, but if we're just talking grid down, hopefully no one got hurt, right? It just went dark. Power's gone. Maybe not. It's ever coming back, right? Is prepare your preps. Think about your candles. Now, if you're not home, now's the time to get home, right? Time to think about your get home plan. You can do the same drill if you're at Walmart or if you're at work. Power goes out. Does your phone work? Does your car work? If your car doesn't work and it's just a power outage, you got some options. There's the shelter in place that we've talked about before, or you start walking home. But hopefully you already have a plan, and if you've got a long walk home, whether it's 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, right? It depends on how far your commute is, how far your area of operation is. You might have a long walk, but it's probably time. Once again, though, before you start walking, what supplies can you gather where you're at? Is there bottled water? Do you have the right shoes on? If you're maybe at Walmart, maybe, I'm not saying loot, maybe you can grab a nicer pair of shoes, socks, comfortable clothes, bottles of water, get you a couple candy bars for that walk home, right? And same thing if you're at work. Some offices, some buildings, some job sites have stuff like bottled water. So whether you have a get home bag or not, if it's safe where you're at, you might want to think about gathering some supplies before you head out for that walk, whether it's a couple days. Now, if you've got family at home, or you have people at home and you have people at work, you should probably talk about it before the power outage, which is to say, hey, I'm going to walk home, right? If I'm at work and somebody's at home, family's at home, I'm going to walk home, don't come looking for me. But you guys need to do this to get ready, right? And it could take me, and you should know ahead of time, hey, it's going to take me 2 days to get home. You guys need to be ready, and don't shoot me when I'm trying to get back in the house, right? You should have that kind of a plan, a get back together plan, just in case, because if the power goes out, if there's a blackout, if there's an EMP, you're not going to be able to get on the phone and call and say, hey, I'm walking home. It's going to take me 2 days, right? You can work that out ahead of time. It's not that scary of a conversation. It's just a hypothetical. Hey, if something happened, I had to walk home. This is about how long it's going to take me. You could say this is the route, and you could either have a plan, hey, we're going to meet up somewhere, or I'm going to come home. You can work that out ahead of time. If you don't live in a very survivable location, but you know someone that does, or you have a place to go, you could just say, you know what, power goes out, whether I'm at work, at the store, we're going to meet here, right? Go meet at this guy's house, and auntie's house. We're gonna all meet there. So if something goes, we just start walking there. But you want to have at least something sketched out ahead of time, back of a napkin after everyone's had a couple drinks. Hey, what would we do? Where are we gonna go? Something happens. You want to have that worked out, right? Prepare your preps. Obviously, if it's short term, like, no big deal. If you think the power's gonna be down for an hour, you don't need to fill out the water bob. But if you think it could be days, weeks, if you just don't know, you want to start enacting that plan quickly. The faster the better, right? If we look at Venezuela, there was a big power outage in Venezuela in modern history. People got crazy and started looting almost right away, right? So you're not, I know I've had conversations. I've been second generation prepper, been a prepper a long time, had those conversations, and you read the prepper fiction novels, and there's always this whole, hey, things would be okay for the first couple days because no one's going to freak out, no one's going to know what's going on. So you got a couple days before things start getting crazy. But if you look at what happened in Venezuela, it was almost immediately. People started looting, rioting, robbing, attacking almost immediately when the power went out. And I can kind of see that. You look at the world we live in now. I don't know that it's going to take a couple days of the power out before people start going nuts. Especially if you think about, hey, stores, like, hey, you got all these beautiful stores. I don't know if the shopping malls still exist. Power's out means there's no security systems. Maybe it's time to go get some stuff, right? So I would imagine if it was a serious blackout and people were cut off from information, cut off from power, things might get crazy pretty quickly. So have that in the back of your mind, have that plan in place, have your personal protection ready to go. And once again, if you're not home, start walking home. If you are home, have that plan. Start collecting water. Start securing your location. Gather your preps, whether it's candles, whatever you have, any kind of simple fortifications, even if it's just lock the door, right? Go inside, lock the door, and then it's Grayman. I mean, I would highly recommend Grayman as your overall strategy, especially in the beginning, even if it's an EMP. You want to keep a low profile, right? Which means, hey, you got a generator, you're going to have food in the fridge, and we'll get to that. Do you want to run the generator right away? Maybe not. Maybe keep a low profile, and that's really going to depend on where you're at and what's going on around you, right? If you're in a situation where, hey, you've got a pretty safe neighborhood and everyone's running their generators, great. You run your generator. Maybe the people that don't have a generator and power's going to be gone for a long time before the food spoils, you're going to have a big barbecue and have all the neighbors over and cook up everything in the freezer. Maybe not, right? right? That really depends on where you live. I think you're going to have a lot of people that are opportunists, a lot of people that are going to be scared, panicky, potentially hungry, and there's going to be a lot of chaos. In any kind of a situation like that, you want to keep a low profile. You don't want to advertise your situation, which maybe means don't use your flashlights at night unless you have to. You don't want to be the only house on the street where people inside have flashlights. Maybe hold off on your generator if you can, right? Give it a couple days, give it a couple weeks. But how are you going to cook? Well, if it's an EMP, I've got a solar backup system. That might not work, right? Mine's not in a Faraday cage. EMP kind of changes the rules, but if your power doesn't work, what about propane? Do you have any kind of propane cooking options? You're going to need to cook your food. You're going to need to heat your house, whether that's firewood, whether that's propane. Propane's still going to work if there's an EMP until it runs out, right? What's your stash of propane look like? Or can you survive without cooking food maybe for a couple weeks? And the reason I say a couple weeks is if it is an EMP, if it is a long blackout, maybe a cyber attack wiped out the entire grid, that may not come back for a long time, right? That could be equivalent to an EMP attack. People that don't have food, people that don't have water are going to get crazy very quickly, and unfortunately they're not going to last very long unless they can find food and water. There's going to be stages of depopulation, right? People that can't find water aren't going to make it more than a few days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, depending on how much water they can find. But if they don't have a good renewable source of water, they're not going to make it very long. Same thing with food, right? If you can stay low profile for, say, the first month without bandits and tracking tension and people saying, hungry people smelling your barbecue or your campfire going saying they got food over there and I haven't eaten in a week, I'm going over there, you're going to want to keep a low profile. It's almost zombie apocalypse rules in that sense, because you're going to have hungry people wandering around looking for food, and you don't want to attract attention, right? They're going to come, they're going to smell your food, and they're going to charge at you, just like the zombies would in the Hollywood shows on TV. So, yes, if you have a generator, if you have food in the freezer, if you have food in the fridge, rather than making a lot of noise, drawing a lot of attention, you might want to think about how do you preserve it, right? What food do you have? If you don't have solar backup, if you don't have a battery backup, or maybe those got wiped out by EMP, evaluate the food you have frozen and can you preserve it right away? We're back in that first hours, first day. If you have, say, meats, there's salt preservation. You can do salted pork. You can do salted beef. It's not so good. What about smoking it? There's some things maybe you can do. Smoking might draw some attention if you're doing that, because you're probably not going to smoke it inside, but can you salt it? Can you can it? Is there anything you can do to preserve that food other than either eating it all or, hey, we're going to run the generator a couple hours a day? Might not be safe, right? So we said flashlights, how are you going to cook, propane stove. So long-term, security, obviously personal protection, home protection might be necessary. Once again, I imagine the first couple days of a major system scenario where we are cut off from civilization, I think things would deteriorate quickly to the point of feeling like a zombie apocalypse movie. Maybe not. Maybe I'm being pessimistic on that. There's things like, obviously your water. We said fill up the buckets, fill up the tubs. At some point, you're going to need more water than what you have, no matter how much water you have stored, whether you have a garage full of 50-gallon barrels. Eventually, you're going to need water. You're going to need a way to filter the water. You're going to need a way to gather water, scavenge water, filter water, those kind of things. So certainly water is going to be important the entire time. Food is going to be important the entire time, right? Canning, as we said, salting food. Now, sanitation's important. If there's a major power outage, if pumps aren't pushing, it's possible the sewer could go out, whether you're on septic, whether you're on city sewer. I'm on an aerobic septic, which requires power to run. Once again, I have backup power, but if there's an EMP, all bets are off. You might want to think about, emergency sanitation, alternative sanitation. How are you going to clean your hands? How are you going to wash your dishes? What are you going to do with the human waste? You can't just leave it piled up in the corner, right? So think about those kind of things ahead of time, even if you're just going to dig a latrine. If you have a yard, you say, you know what, we're going to dig a latrine. That's our long-term sanitation. do you have hand sanitizers? Do you have soap? What do your backups look like? And then, of course, there's the winter, right? Heating in the winter. Campfire is good, but it's going to draw attention. Do you have propane heaters, Mr. Buddy heaters, things like that, right? In the summertime, how do you stay cool in the summer? Be able to hydrate, stay in the shade, stay hydrated. Certainly fans are great. AC is best, but once again, power outage. AC might be off the list. That draws a lot of electricity. You might be able to work out if you can solar charge a battery fan. Something like that could help you out. So it's something to think about, right? It's kind of a role-playing scenario, but it doesn't cost a lot to think about, to have those plans. How are you going to survive a blackout? How are you going to survive a grid down? We talk about EMP. I know some people say EMP, not going to happen. I've actually seen some YouTubers say EMP is not going to happen. If you look at some of the reports on Russian military capabilities, they have hypersonic weapons. They have HEMP, right, which is the hypersonic EMP capabilities. That technology exists. They can deliver that technology, and it wouldn't take a lot to drop the grid. So I think EMP is a very realistic scenario. It's certainly in play right now. Right, maybe at some point we'll have world peace and it'll be off the table, but until that time that we have world peace, EMP is a real thing that could happen, and it is something to think about, right? We're talking about preparation, not panic, not fear-mongering. If you're prepared, you don't have to be afraid, right? And the more people that are prepared, the less zombies there's going to be when something happens. As we said, people that aren't prepared are going to be hungry. They're going to be looking for food. They're going to be looking for water. If people will loot now for iPhones, imagine what they're going to do when they don't have food, right? They're going to be looting and killing. It will be zombie apocalypse style, people going door to door looking for food. So you have to prepare, right? You should want to prepare. You want to protect your family from something horrible like that. So I hope that helps out. And as always, we appreciate you for watching.